Today, I'm gonna continue working on the heroes for the. Excuse me for a second. For the coming Knights of Tempest expansion. Let's go to the neutral folder. Like I said, there's a neutral faction. I've said this, previously on a previous stream. The A factions and the neutral faction is pretty much like the faction, and obviously the neutral. They tend to have cards from every other faction, or they tend to have cards that are faction neutral. So the Knights of Tempest expansion is a neutral, it's a neutral faction expansion. So the cards can be used by any other faction in the game. So let's start with the heroes. So I think last time I finished creating the Emania hero. I haven't gone back to it yet since then, but I think I like what it is, how it is right now. Let me see if there's actually a lower cost. So I'd like to have at least one hero out of the. So every hero, like for example, Emmanuel, sorry about that, has 7 different versions of it. I have to have I like having one of these versions to have a low cost, because each version has its own effects and its own cost. So if I don't have that, depending on how after playing it, playtesting the card, I'll decide whether it's hard to get, because a good hero. Okay, there's actually a reasonably low cost hero, but a good hero. If the hero cards are very good, then it probably doesn't matter. You'll play them anyways. And naturally, I'm trying to make every hero card as good as possible, because it's a game that I like playing as well. So there's no point in making it. I'm creating a game that I like. I like to play. So trying to make the game as fun as possible benefits me as well, since I like playing it. I would like to play the game that I'm creating, instead of just a creator, just for creating a game's sake. So this is a relatively low cost hero. So I may need to. Okay, so that's why. I was wondering why the stats are so high. I guess it's because there's nothing here to increase. I forgot about that. So the only thing that I increased for this hero is the attack points. So the common version has 2 attack points, 2 defense points, and the brilliant version, and it's a relatively low cost hero. So this is a very powerful hero because of its low cost and its attack points, and this effect that it has. Because there's also another hero that's also 7 costs. And let me pull that up real quick in your window. It's a human faction, the Burin clan expansion. That's the first expansion of the game. And the hero of that expansion, it's one of my favorite. It's actually one of my favorite heroes of the game so far. I think these are the new heroes. Yep. So title folder and wins guide here. So these 2 cards are relatively similar in their effects. But this one gives. This one says whenever a creature you control attacks, it gains +4 health points. That's huge because creatures do not have. There really aren't that many effects that give health points, because having more health really boosts their survivability a lot in this game. Since defense points can be bypassed by some, the defense points of creatures can be bypassed by some effects. Health points can be bypassed. It's very hard for health points to be bypassed, you know. So giving a creature more health just means that it'll survive. There's a higher chance that it'll survive compared to giving it more defense, because there are effects that can bypass defense and go after the creature's attack. And when the creature's attack goes to 0 below, the creature dies and must be removed from the battlefield. And creatures can only attack while they're on the battlefield. Then this one, creatures you play gain quick. Well, this one says creatures you play gain quick, so it could be any creature. It could be a squire creature, it could be a rat creature, it could be a human creature, it could be a Burin clan creature. It could be any form of any creature in the game. So I guess that's why it's 7 cost. It could be any creature in the game. While this one, when it's squire, so this one has to be a squire, because only this expansion has squires right now. So this is relatively tailored to just this expansion. Only creatures from this expansion will gain this effect. So you can't play a Burin clan creature. You can't play Burin clan creatures and still gain this effect, this quick or brave. While if you play this one, it doesn't matter what creatures you play, they gain this effect no matter what. While this one, creatures under your control gain occult while they're under your control. Occult is a very powerful effect, because there are already very few things that deal with creatures, very effects that target creatures to kill them, to remove them from the game, the battlefield, so they can't attack you. So having a call just makes creatures harder to kill, because the call simply means that they can be targeted. Or they can be targeted by effects that are under the control of an opponent player. So if your creature is gonna, and this is all creatures, it doesn't matter what, just like this one, creatures you play. So this affects any creature on your side of the battlefield, while this only works on squires. So this hero is obviously more based towards its own expansion, the creatures of its own expansions, while this one is more geared towards all creatures. And this one has a stat points that can be increased. So it has an effect number that can be increased. So the stat points aren't. This one doesn't have an effect that can be increased. So since it doesn't have any effect that can be increased, I decided to increase the stats of the hero itself. So 2, 2, 5, 2. While this one, the thing that is increased is the 2 health points that it gives. So these 2 heroes are pretty much, seems like a very fun hero, to tell you the truth. And I would like to see how it plays later on when I'm trying to I want to create all the heroes first, and then order them and then play test them all at once, just to see how they play before I start working on the formation spells, inscriptions, enchantments, diagrams, and arrays of this expansion. The domains I've already created. The creatures I've already created, but like I said before, I can add more creatures, more great creatures to the creature set. The crystals I've created. Some cost a lot, while some cost, some are cheap. So this crystal enters the battlefield in a tapped orientation. When this crystal enters the battlefield, summon up to 4 token copies of any basic crystals that are on your side of the battlefield. So each crystal has its own effect. So there are 9 crystals, and each one has its own effect and its own crystal cost. It also has 4 different rarity versions of it that you can choose from to create a deck with. So right now, this expansion, this expansion also has the same, also has its own crystals as well. That also has 4 different versions they can choose from. So each expansion has its own set of crystals. They always, I try to make each expansion come with its own set of crystals, its own set of domains, advanced domains, each with their own different effects. And then if the expansion has creatures, then it'll have its own set of creatures and its own set of great creatures. So the great creatures of this Rise of the Bjorn Clan expansion are different from the great creatures of this upcoming expansion. You see how this vigilant, peaceful, loyal knight, kind-hearted, battle brave. See how this one is different. Subjugator, strong, powerful, forefather, bruiser, brawler, battle spy, battle cleric, arrogant. The battle spy is actually a very, very powerful card, but I don't want to talk about it right now. So each expansion has its own set of creatures. Bjorn Apprentice, and its own set of great creatures. And it also this Bjorn Clan expansion only has spells, only formation spells. So this upcoming Night of Thames expansion is a lot bigger than the Bjorn Clan expansions, simply because it has around the same amount of, it has more leaders. It has more leader cards, or maybe relatively the same amount. Let me make sure. Yeah, I think it's the same amount of leaders. So it has the same amount of leaders. It has more heroes than the Rise of Bjorn Clan expansion. It has not only formation spells, it has formation inscriptions, formation enchantments, formation diagrams, formation arrays. This expansion really only comes with formation spells, because the hero of this expansion, of the Rise of the Bjorn Clan expansion, is a mage. So mages in this in the storyline usually only focus on spells, while each hero of this expansion has its own talents and abilities. So some heroes are focused on spells, while some are not. And it's pretty much just, it's not as unique as this one, where this one only has focuses on spells. These are more, they have multiple talents that that they have. So this expansion has a lot more going for it when it comes to formations. And then the domains, about the same amount of domains, maybe more. A bit more crystals. But the Nine of Heavens expansion doesn't have basic crystals, because it doesn't need basic crystals. It can use any crystal. And this is a basic crystal. It has no crystal cost, and you can only play one crystal during your turn. You can only play one crystal during your turn. That crystal could be in a game. That crystal could be a basic crystal. See how it doesn't have a crystal cost right here, or an advanced crystal that has a crystal cost, and it has its own effects as well. So this crystal on the battlefield, on your side of the battlefield, represents this. The blue crystal behind the number pretty much represents the crystal type that it requires. So this requires a mana crystal. So this is a mana. This is a mana crystal. So when you play this card, you need to play one of these to play this card, because it requires one mana crystal to be tapped in order to play it. While this one doesn't have a crystal cost, so you can just play just you can just play it whenever you want. So that's the difference between a regular crystal or basic crystal and an advanced crystal. And advanced crystals, you can only have 3 copies of a crystal with the same name in your deck. Of an advanced crystal with the same name in your deck. Basic crystals do not have that limitation. So you can fill your deck you can have your deck filled with basic crystals with the same name, and it doesn't really matter. Like, having more crystals in your deck just means you'll be drawing more crystals while you're playing the game. Having less crystals in your deck, also means that you might not have enough crystals to play your cards, because each crystal represents one mana crystal. So this card represents one mana crystal. This card tells you when you tap this card, it produces 3 basic mana crystals that you may use until the end of turn. So this technically represents 3 mana crystals, while this one only represents 1. That's why this one has a crystal cost and this one doesn't. And the Knights of Themis expansion, since they do not have a basic crystal, it's simply because the cards require this red crystal cost simply means is a metro crystal cost, just like this. So this is a metro crystal cost, and it has this is a metro crystal written right here, and it has a metro crystal cost. And the metro crystal cost simply means that you can play it using any crystal of your choosing. So it can be this crystal, which is a mana crystal. This is also a mana crystal, but it's an advanced version of it, of a basic crystal. Or you can also use let me see. Gothar's expansion, crystals, basic crystal. Or you can also use an aura crystal to play this card. You can use both. You can if you have 3 mana crystals. Oops. So if you have 3 mana crystals and 1 aura crystal, you can use all 3 or 4 of them to play this card. If you have 9, obviously you can only play this card if you have 9 mana crystals that you can tap to play this card, because it has a 9 mana crystal cost. So this expansion really doesn't. You can pretty much play every card of this expansion using any crystal that you want to use. So it gives you the ability to to customize your deck with more with cards from different expansions, simply because now you have a middle ground with these cards that can pretty much you can pretty much use to play any crystals that you have. Usually what happens when you have decks that have cards from 2 different expansions is that the crystals, you can only play aura card. You can only play cards with an aura. You can only play this card with an aura crystal. Costs 2 aura crystals. So if you have 2 aura crystals, you can play this card. So if you're playing the deck with 2 different that have 2 different crystal costs, a mana crystal cost and an aura crystal cost, if you only drawing aura crystals, and you have mana crystal cards in your hand, you won't be able to play the cards in your hand. But with this expansion, these metro crystals means that you can play these cards using this metro crystal. So if you have let's look for a different crystal real quick. So this crystal actually just has a simple effect. You tap crystals to play cards. So each crystal that you tap represents one crystal for the crystal cost. And this metro crystal, unless it tells you it represents more than one, each crystal on the battlefield represents only one of that crystal type, which is metro. So this represents only one metro. You can use this one metro to play this card if you have another crystal, to play. If you have another metro crystal to play it, or an aura crystal. So you can play this card with a metro crystal cost, with a metro crystal, or you can play it with an aura crystal. Likewise, this card, you can play this card with any crystal of your choosing. So you get how it works? A metro crystal cost can be played using any crystal of your choosing, while a metro crystal can be used to play any card with the crystal cost of your choosing. So the metro is pretty much just like a neutral crystal mechanic in the game. So this expansion actually makes the game, gives the game more, freedom, give players more freedom when creating cards, and also gives them more options to create the decks with. And the cards are actually also very fun. Each expansion has its own, that's pretty much what I like about the game. Each expansion has its own unique feel to it, its own unique play styles, its own unique creatures, its own unique great creatures, its own unique cards. So it's always fun, to learn an expansion, to learn the cards of the game, because you just have so many options. Each expansion, you have so many options of cards to choose from each expansion, that you can just pretty much just continue creating decks and never run out of options to build a deck with. Adding these heroes, adding this expansion just gives you that, just make the options a lot bigger. So let's start with this Jacob fair. Let's start with this hero. Okay. Jacob. Let me change the name and scheme of this card of this So Jacob 1. Name. I usually like giving them their own titles. It gives me giving them titles just it helps my imagination on what type of cards, what type of effect to give it. So having, that's pretty much why I have the titles for the heroes when I create them. But it's also pretty good to. I'm also finding it easier to just give them this type of name. That way. Cancel. What's going on? Jacob Fair. Jacob Fire. There we go. Oops. Paste. I guess I could have just done this instead. Actually, no. Do this instead. Three. Excuse me. 4. So 1. Okay, 1. Oops. Another 1. 3, 4. I'll make this 5. and 6, and last one, 7th. Okay, let's start with this. So the effect is, while this hero is under your control on the battlefield, you may laugh once during your turn. So let me write it down before I tell you what the keyword laugh means. The battlefield, you may laugh once during your turns. So entry 2, that means you can only choose 2 effects below. And the first effect, you can only choose 2 abilities below. First ability is, you are timid while this hero is under your control. And the last one is, the first time you play, hold on a second, let me. Okay, there we go. Okay, the first time you play 5 or more cards during your turn, creatures under your control, creatures you control, creatures under creatures under your control, creatures you control, creatures under your control gain +1 attack points, AP, until the end of the turn. So this is it. Oops. So during, there's one more right here. Let me make it fit a little bit. Okay, there we go. So while this hero is under your control, on the battlefield, you may laugh once during your turns. You are timid while this hero is under your control. So let's start with laugh. Let me pull it up real quick on my phone. So when a player laughs, they show a card in their hand, then reduce that card's crystal cost by 1. So that's pretty much what the effect means. And also, you must physically laugh for this effect to actually work. So when you laugh, it's actually one of the effects of one of my favorite effects is that the player has to actually physically laugh for this effect to go off. But the effects, like I said, the effect simply means that show a card obviously with a crystal cost in your hand to all players, then reduce this crystal cost by 1. That means it costs 1 less crystals to play while it's in your hand. And then timid, and this follows the theme of the hero, is the Knight of Might. So obviously he's actually a very powerful hero. So the timid effect goes with the hero itself. So you're timid while you have this hero. So it's kind of like you're afraid of it. And the laugh has to do with the Titan of Day, laughter. She is the Titan. Hemera is the Titan that favors this hero, and Hemera is the Titan of Day, and her title is laughter. So that's why there's the laugh effect. And a timid card. A player with a timid status cannot be the only target of an effect. So there are effects in this game that target players, as well as effects that target creatures and terms. A player with a timid status can be the only target of an effect. So before a timid player can be targeted by an effect, that effect must target multiple players or cards. So cards that target one player won't be able to work with this. That also goes with the cards that you play. So if cards that you play, I guess I have to change it. So a player with a timid stat cannot be the only target of an effect or ability that is under the control of an opponent player. So this makes it easier for you to target yourself and for effects to target you, but at the same time they can target effects that your opponents can target you, unless they target multiple players and or multiple cards and players. So the first time you play 5 or more cards in your turn, creatures under your control gain +1 attack points until the end of the turn. Yep. You're timid while this hero is under your control. While this hero is under your control in the battlefield, you may laugh once through your turns. Okay. It looks fine to me. Now, let's work on the crystal. I guess I can change this to 2 or more. So 2 or 5. I think 2 is better. So I think, 2 is better. But I guess I'll leave it at 5. 2 makes it easier for this to happen more often. Because if it's two, you usually tend to play at least one crystal each turn. So now you, after you play your crystal, now all you have to do is play one extra card. Then creatures under your control get +1 attack points. But at the same time, later on during the game, if you don't have, if you don't have that many cards in your hand, that's usually how it is in the later game, where you just don't have cards anymore that you can play. Then you won't be able to proc this at all. So let's go to crystal cost. So I guess it's kind of balanced in a way, because you get to with this effect, you get to reduce a card in your hand by 1 each turn, each of your turns, just from this effect alone. So if you play this card early, you can literally reduce a card from your hand every of your turn. So I'll keep that at 0. Let me see if 4 works on this one. Just keep it at 0 as well. Let me see. So if I increase the defense points, this is more of a. If I increase the defense points, just it means the hero survive a bit more. And if I don't, it just means that I can probably lower the crystal. The crystal cost will be less. Simply for the more stats it has, the more survivability the player that has it has. The less stat it has, naturally, the weaker it is technically, but it also depends on the effect itself. So I can go 4. Oops, sorry about that. Let me see. I think that's the number I'm thinking. So 4 is a good number, because this effect is only as powerful as I think it is, but having some defense will actually help the hero, will give you more, it'll make it more enticing for players to choose it. So I can make it a 6. I think this card is not only as powerful. So let me try a 6 cost and just see how it looks. If a 6 cost works, yeah. So this is not bad for a 6 cost. And this effect is only useful when you're targeted by effects and abilities. And there aren't that many effects that target opponent players, but there still are. If you're facing against a deck that has effects like that, then yeah, this card is very useful. But most decks won't have this effect. I mean, most decks don't have effects that target you as a player, as an opponent player, or as a player. So this effect won't be useful most of the time. While this one, the condition is if you play 2 or more cards. So if you don't have any, if you don't have 2 or more cards in your hand that you can play, then this effect is obviously useless. And this one only reduces 1 card in your hand by 1. During your turn. So I think this is not bad for a 6 cost hero. But I'm still thinking about that. This defense points. Because this looks much, this looks much better as the 6 cost than a 6 cost with 4 defense points. So let me try saving this to see how. If I don't like it, I'll switch back to the. So let's start with. Oh no. How did I get here? So hero. Jacob Fire. So I'll just save it at Jacob Fire. Powerful. Let's see. I'll leave it. I'll leave the four extra defense. When I play test it, maybe then I'll probably end up changing it if I feel like the 4 extra defense is too much for it. So now for the brilliant version, and I can increase this because that's a number. It has a and naturally I'll increase this. It's pointless to increase this, or just make the card even worse. So let's come here, increase this by 4. And then I'll increase this as well. So you can laugh up to 4 times during your turns. So that means you can reduce a card in your hand by 4. So you have to do it 4 times. Or you can reduce 4 cards in your hand by 1. Excuse me. So let me see if I like this. So, brilliant version. Or I can do it like this, where now before I do that, let me just duplicate this just to see how I don't want it, because it's only 6 cost, so I don't want it to be too powerful. Being able to reduce the crystal cost of cards, it's actually very powerful. So I can have it like this. So while this here is under your control, you may laugh once during your turns. So it'll just be 1. Then only this increases. And this seems like a good 6 cost card. Or this. Oops. Cancel. Okay, so I'll leave it like that. So you may laugh up to 4 times during your turns. Now for the unique version. Oops. Close. this one is will be, you may laugh up to, oops, you may laugh up to 3 times. At least I'm still thinking about it. Okay, so I can do it a different way. Well, let me save this first. Just I'll show you how I can do it after I finish saving this, because I probably shouldn't. So how I was thinking about doing it is keep this as 1. Oops. Keep this as 1. And raise this to 3. Save. So this is a more, let me try it this way. So 2 times, then I'll make this 4. File, save as. First time you play 4 more cards in your turn, creatures under your control gain +1 attack points until the end of the turn. Then the last one. That's weird. Let me see how this one looks. So this will be a 2. This will be a 4. So this will be the main effect of the hero. That's what, being able to reduce the critical cost of cards. Then this will be like the side effect, where the less cards, the more cards, when the first time you play 2 more cards, you can just give all creatures. That's if you're playing a deck with creatures. 12 plus the attack points up to the end of the turn. So file, save as. So let me think about it real quick. So let me just change this to the brilliant version and add a 1 in front of it. Then let me compare it. Jacob Fair, brilliant 1, brilliant 1. So which one do you? So this one is a bit more balanced, I think, compared to this one. This one is actually a lot more powerful than this one. So I guess I'll stick with this. So I just have to no, I don't have to delete that one. I can just delete this one. Then resave it again. And then for the first one, common version, I'll do it like this. common version, I'll change that from 2 to 5. Then JPEG. That's it. Let me just look at the built-in version again. That's weird. So let's go back to the built-in version. Because there's so many ways, you know, that's pretty much one of the things that I have to work on. And many ways to, you know, change the effects. I like this the way it is, but this is the part that I'm thinking about working on because of the cost. Lowering this number makes it easier for you to get, you know, to prog this. Increasing this number and keeping this the same makes it harder for you to prog this, but when you can, you gain plus 4 attack points. So it rewards players that play more cards, but it's harder to play more cards during the later game. But this is a 6 cost, so it shouldn't be too hard to play, you know. It's actually hard to play 5 or more cards within a single turn. During any, you know, either during the early game or the late game. Unless it's a effect that summons cards. So those are there. Okay. So I think I just leave it like that. I'll change it back to the way it was before. Four attack points. Let's see. I guess I'll leave it the way it is, the way it was. Okay, yeah, so I guess this is fine. I'll keep it this way. So it's not really that powerful of a 6 cost. It actually is because of this effect. Because of the top effect. Oops. Do I go forward or do I go back? Because of the top effect, it's actually very powerful, you know, for 6 cost. And then this makes it less powerful, and it has 4 defense points. For 6 cost with 4 defense points, that's a lot. Because when you can play 6 cost cards, it's usually still like early on during the game. It's not that hard to get, you know. No, it's probably like more like mid game. Then late game is when you start playing like 10 cost, 20 cost, you know, crystal cost cards. So I'll work on one more hero. Then I think that'll be it for today. Or it's getting close to the 1 hour mark, so I may just end the stream right now because it'll probably take me another hour to work on this hero. So yeah, I think that'll be it for today. Yeah, it'll probably take me another hour or so, maybe even less. But I prefer 1 hour stream over a 2 hour, 3 hour stream. So at least you've seen the first hero. This is this hero and are my two favorite heroes of this expansion, Knights of Themis expansion. This hero and this hero. Oh, let me click on this one. This is the hero that started all. This is like the main hero of the expansion. That's why he's the Knight of Law, because Themis is the Titan of Law that governs law, and he's like the head. Basil Grandquaker is like the head of all the other. He's the head of all the other knights. He's like the Grand Knight. Then these are like lesser knights, but they're also, each knight has its own army. But they fall under Themis, obviously, but slightly below Themis in the scheme of order is Grandquaker, and then the rest. So he is like the main hero. Then these are also main heroes, but obviously this is obviously the main one. Then these are like the lesser heroes. But then each hero I take I've put work into creating to making each hero unique in their own way. And I actually like creating each hero. I don't really have any. I don't, other than the fact that I like this hero a lot. I like creating. I pretty much like the concept of this hero from the very beginning. With Jacob Fair, and also the Grandquaker hero. So these are the two my two favorite heroes of the expansion. But I haven't played the cards yet. So after playing the cards, I might prefer a different hero after playing the cards themselves, because what I create and the things that I create and the things that I like might be completely two different things. I might like the concept of these two heroes, but once I start playing once I start playing cards, the decks that are based around them, I realize that I may realize that they're nice heroes, but they're not really the gameplay, the type of heroes that I like, playing myself. But technically, I enjoy playing all the heroes. That's why I create them. But naturally, there'll be heroes that are like more than others. And those two right now are my favorite, conceptually. Ideally, they're my favorite, but once the games, once I start playing the game, start playing the cards themselves, then I'll finally figure out which one that I should like playing compared to which ones that I actually like, that I just like, just because. And this hero, I actually like this hero, to a certain extent, but I really don't have any idea how she'll, I have a theme in my head of them trying to create, but reality and concept are always, two different things. It might play completely differently than what I thought, than what I'm, envisioning in my mind. And if it's fun the way it is, then I'll leave it the way it is. And if it's not fun, then I'll probably think about changing it. 20 cost. Merciful.